Encyclopedia Eorzea Volume 3 is out for pre-orders. It's coming out in December, and along with this pre-order page, Square has given us some images, some previews of some of the pages from different chapters, and I want to look over that stuff with you guys and see if there's any new information here. So one of the pages is the Ancient World, and I'm assuming we're going to get more than just these 2 pages on the Ancient Society, because these books focus on Shadowbringers and Endwalker, and Ancient Society is a huge pillar of those expansions and their storytelling and the overall narrative. And I think this is arguably the piece of lore that is most interesting to most Final Fantasy XIV fans. I think that's a fair argument to make. A lot of people really like the Ancients and looking back on what was and uncovering those mysteries. So it is really interesting to see them dedicating a lot of space for it, which was expected. So I'm going to zoom in on these and I'm going to try and read them as best as I can. So for the Ancient World, it says, untold ages ago, the star we lived upon was sundered, 13 reflections cast from the source to begin their own unique histories. The following is an account of the singular people that predated the sundering and subsequent attempts to unify the 14 worlds once more. So the Ancients, it says, when the world was yet whole, the star was not known as Hydaelyn, but Aetheris. We knew that already. And the Ancients are their older ancestors. Compared to modern man, they were possessed of far superior physical and etheric attributes, and were so long-lived as to be practically immortal. They assumed the role of the star's custodians, and thriving on its bounty, their arcane arts advanced to almost a miraculous degree. Something godlike creation, developing godlike creation magics. They devoted their lives to the betterment of their world. These are all mostly things that we knew. Practically immortal, I think, is something people are going to be interested to see, that expanded upon the concept of life and death as the cycle for what it is in the Ancients, which is different. Now, I did see this on Twitter earlier, the dress, and we see the comparison here between the black robes and then the white robes, but they didn't really give a whole lot of distinction between the two and why someone would make that choice, at least not in this section that says dress. This is the Ancients were towering beings, which we knew that already. Their dressing was very, very simple. Most citizens opted for the simple robe and face mask, little distinguishing characteristics, but they don't go into detail as to why someone would choose to have a white robe. Now, we know about the situation with Vana, with Themis. We can only assume that he was wearing it because, Elidibus has always worn white, but maybe he was wearing that color to try to be undercover. I don't know. I really wish they would have expanded more on what qualifies somebody to have white robes, but we don't get that. So the limits of their creation, I guess this talks about things that they couldn't do. So they could create life, but they can't create souls. And we did know that before. It says a life brought in forth in accordance with the laws of the physical world would spontaneously form a soul, but merely mimicking a corporeal shape is not always sufficient for this process to occur. Such soulless creations were merely constructs animated by ether and were classified as arcane entities rather than living beings. Again, something we already knew. Concepts goes more into what creation magic is, and I guess it uses the example of a horse. It says in the case of a horse, for instance, its concept would include all those factors which make a horse a horse. It is a terrestrial animal. It's got 4 legs, a herbivore. It has 2 eyes and a mane, and so on. By sharing this archetype with others, anyone could create the perfect horse by the following definitive horse concept. And then they devised a method in which a concept could be reliably stored within a crystal. And then if you go down here, we get a little bit about ancient society. It says, mortal history is a history of war, yet such conflicts are conspicuously absent when it comes to the ancients. This unbroken harmony can be attributed to the physical and spiritual plenty provided by creation magics. The need to wrest resources from others through violent means simply did not exist. Confrontations took the form of lively debate, and peaceful days were spent fine-tuning creation techniques. Sharing concepts with colleagues in pursuit of the greater good of the star served as passion and purpose both. It does go on to say, unfettered creation, however, carried with it the potential for unforeseen destruction. In an answer to this concern, the Convocation of 14, we know who they are, they instituted a stringent process to regulate the distribution of concepts. And we saw how that unfolded when we went back in time in Elpis and Endwalker. So, okay, little bits of information here that we didn't already know. Okay. So what's next? All right, the Warriors of Light. This is interesting to me. So the Warriors of Light, this is talking specifically about the Warriors of Light from the first. One thing that people were talking about on Twitter is Ardbert now has a surname. It is Ardbert Heilfist, I believe so. Heilfist, I'm not sure how you would say that. Heilfist probably sounds a little more correct. A man destined to become a Warrior of Light, and it goes into his backstory, which I think people will find super interesting. Ardbert is a fan favorite, especially of mine. Ardbert's a great character. His journey is super sad, but I think one that resonated with a lot of people. It talks about how he was raised by his grandfather in a small mountain village where his only playmates were the Amaro that they kept as livestock. It is fortunate then that the lone man of learning in the village, a priest of the Church of the First Light, was intent on educating the boy with lessons on reading and numbers, followed by the wonders of history and mythology. Thus inspired, Ardbert began dreaming of adventure in the wider world beyond. It goes on to say he was 18 when those dreams no longer seemed so fanciful. Traveling merchants brought news of the village to Ilmore's newly established adventuring guild, whose members ascribed to unorthodox ways of life. These so-called adventurers would roam free from nation to nation, taking jobs that paid equal to the risks. So that is... And it goes on to say down here even further, Ardbert was spurned on by those stories, and then his grandfather passed away the following year. So I guess he passed away when he was 19. Ardbert gathered together his belongings and anything that he had, and he set out to become an adventurer. And then it goes even further. We did, we get a lot of backstory on Ardbert from this book. So it says that he goes to Ilmore. He made straight to the tavern. The guild had no qualifications. He just had to write his name down to register, and it was based purely on work ethic and natural ability. Healthy dose of luck to succeed is what it says here. And it even goes into a few jobs that he took on. He talks about a bounty on hobgoblin brigands who were roaming the roads into town. That was his first real adventure. It says he did not count on how cunning they would be because they had laid an ambush. But Ardbert eventually, he was fighting them off, but he got overwhelmed by the sheer numbers, and they left him for dead. But then Lament had chanced upon him, and if that hadn't happened, Ardbert would have certainly died. And that's when the dwarven healer had left home on a quest on her own, seeking to cure the petrifying illness that infected her sister, and that's how the two of them got connected. And it goes on here even further. I'm assuming this is talking about Brandon in terms of the knight. So this goes on about Brandon, and then he goes on to meet Renda Ray, and then on down here meets Silva. So this goes into, we get a pretty in-depth backstory here for Ardbert, and I can only assume that we're going to get more, given we see this image of all, at least I hope we do. I think the Warriors of Light / Warriors of Darkness have always been a super interesting focal point of the story, especially when they were introduced in Heavensward. Hrothgar, yeah, I saw this. People were talking about how, I guess what I saw on Twitter was somebody said how all the Hrothgar that are like scantily clad, like wearing the harnesses and leaving a lot exposed, were actually following the lore, because it goes in depth in here to say that the harnesses and the leather belts and stuff like that was their preference, to show off as much of their physique as humanly possible, which is kind of funny. So it goes in, it talks about their unique language that they have. Now, some of this we already knew. Like, we knew about the Hellions, we knew about the Lost, and a couple of their distinctions. Yeah, here's the section down here that talks about the dress, proudly display their powerful physiques. Exactly. And then we get a little bit down here in terms of their culture and what makes the two of them different. The main, let's see here. Yeah, a lot of this is stuff that we had inferred from in-game quests, but you know, this is expanded on a little bit. I think Hrothgar players will be happy, especially since Hrothgar players have a lot to be sad about, especially when they add new outfits and hats that don't work. So maybe this will make some of them happy. I don't know. I don't play Hrothgar, so we get a little bit on the Crystarium here. We get some interesting stuff. Ooh, they have they've got a flag, they've got a motto, all this stuff. A bustling city that developed around the Crystal Tower in the years following its sudden appearance in Lakeland. It serves as a safe haven for people of all races and creeds as they join hands in the struggle against the merciless Sin Eaters. So there's their flag. The motto is, when all falls down around you, rise up. That seems appropriate. I like that. It's unusual that they would have... I guess I'd have to go back and look in the other books, but do the other locations and governments, do they have mottos? I have to go look in Volume 1 and Volume 2. I don't remember. Their leader is not listed, even though I feel like it's... If you've played the game, it's obvious who their leader is. The ruling body, they have the settlement council. You've even got the racial distribution here. Most of the largest percentage is human, followed by elf, and then the other variations of the races we're familiar with. The religion is the Church of the First Light. That it lost all credibility in the wake of the flood, and the worship of darkness rose up in its place. So largely secular. Industries goes into their beliefs. The diet, it's going really specific. Talks about the Crystarium citizens suffered through several periods of famine, which is to be expected. It says in recent years, it appears that sweet treats such as coffee biscuits have become a common favorite as times have gotten a little bit better. What else do we have here that's interesting? Okay, so this is the history, and this talked a little bit about, I think there was some Graha stuff that I saw on Twitter, and maybe this is it. Yeah, so it was 8 years after the Flood of Light when the Crystal Tower appeared in Lakeland. The story of how the refugees came to congregate at the base was covered earlier in this volume, it says. But there is more to tell of the settlement's earliest days. The enigmatic mage having refused the honor of becoming king. Okay, so maybe that's why they don't designate him as the leader, because he doesn't want it. But this is talking about the Crystal Exarch. And then he departed abruptly as he arrived, seeking to gauge the tragic state of the realm. And it says he didn't return for 4 years, but during that time, the refugee population had exploded. Shelters started popping up here and there. And then it talks about when he reappeared, they begged him to undo the situation that they were in. They offered him a kingship and he refused. Okay, so the motto came from a speech that he gave, because it says it right here. It says, when all falls down around you, rise up. So that's where their motto comes from. Then it says, thus did he become their advisor. Later known to all as the Crystal Exarch, in hindsight, it is assumed that this man, Grahatia, drew heavily upon the wisdom he had learned during his lifetime in the Source. His instruction covered a wide range of subjects, including the efficient production of food, medicine, manufactured goods, as well as the leave model of labor allocation. So without him, they would have been in really, really rough shape. Yeah, it goes on even further. An enemy of Yulmore, talking about Lord Valthree being that dirty guy that he is. Then it talks about the Warrior of Darkness claiming victory over Valthree and his forces, and the Night Sky was returned to the realm. Talks about how Chai replaced the fallen tyrant as mayor. And then the Crystal Exarch saying his farewells. So this is interesting, and I think this was definitely something that there's a lot of confusion about from when I did my Grahatia video. So it says, technically speaking, this very last paragraph says, technically speaking, the Crystal Exarch had not died. Using the newly developed spirit vessel, the Warrior of Darkness was able to ferry the Exarch's soul and memories safely back to the source. Yet for all intents and purposes, the Crystarium had lost its most cherished advisor. So there were comments on that video where people saying, no, his soul didn't go, it was just his memories. So this should clear it up if there's any confusion at all, this little paragraph. So he didn't die, use the spirit vessel, take the soul and the memories to the source to be combined with the Graha that was in the tower during that time. Very unique situation for him, but that is how it all happened. So we've got some stuff on organizations, and the most interesting thing to me, we've got some characters here that everybody's familiar with, but I saw on Twitter, I feel like I'm talking about Twitter a lot, but I don't think we ever ran into this character here. I'm gonna butcher the name. There's no way I'm gonna be able to say it right because you guys are all over me about the way I pronounce stuff, but Coulson is what I'm going to say. I'm just going to say Coulson and hope that that's right. We never encountered this character. She was the High Commander of the Radiant Host. She was a valiant warrior, but she died fighting the abominations of the final days. So I don't think there's any chance that we're going to encounter her now, but I do think it's interesting that not only are they're giving us an image of a character that we didn't encounter, which, those little nuggets are what makes the books so special. So faces from Journeys Past. So this just goes into, this isn't just characters from the first, because we encounter some other characters too. So speaking of surnames, Reen gets the official surname of Waters, which is the same surname as Thancred. And, she's always kind of been seen as Thancred's adopted daughter. So this makes total sense. We also get a name for her daggers, the Fate Breakers, which Thancred gave to her, forged with crystal harvest in Omnareng. So I'm probably butchered the pronunciation of that. But yeah, so we get a little bit on Reen Waters. Fun fact about the last name Waters, though, it's actually expanded upon. I can't remember. It's one of the short stories, but Thancred didn't give himself the last name Waters. It's not like a Han Solo situation where he said the last name Solo in the movie Solo, and that's where it came from. It was actually Louis Sois-Lever who gave Thancred the last name Waters hastily. So that's where the last name Waters comes from. It's not like a fancy last name, but Reen having the same last name makes total sense. So we've got a section here on Gaia for all you non-raid doers missing out on, kind of an interesting character. Not a ton on her, though. We have Sicard Spence. Got some other interesting characters here. The one that caught my eye in particular was Sophie. Sophie is a part of the Gunbreaker story. She's a native of Rabanastre, Dalmasca. Yeah. Talks about traveling with Radovon, how she was captured, and then more information here on some other various characters, some of which who are not immediately jumping out to me where we know them from, but hey, that'll be fun to read about. Dungeons, Holminster Switch. Got a paragraph talking about the situation that happened there. Got some artwork. A couple of the fights that are there. Ooh, that was sad. Kesleen, that was sad. And then how it transformed. Then you get the Light Warden out of it. Even go a little bit further over here to Don Meg, Garden of Illusions. Got Fancy Frog here. Fancy Frog guy with the platforming boss. See, look at this. They put this page out after I did my video. I'm super curious. I want to know if there's anything that we didn't already know. So the origins of the Gunbreaker can be traced back to the Third Astral Era, when the Allagan Empire was at its zenith of power, subjugating neighboring lands to expand its influence. Pressured by the gradual encroachment of the Imperial armies, the scattered Hrothgar clans were forced to flee their homes in search of refuge. Settling in what is presently known as Boja, they set aside their differences and found a small kingdom with Queen Gunhilda. This is all stuff that we knew. The fledgling nation formed an elite guard known as Gunhilda's Blades. The most distinctive were these soldiers using unusual weapons, which had a built-in device to stock and expel ether. These armaments soon inherited Gunhilda's Blades, although as years passed, the term gun blades came to be preferred. Okay, so that's, we probably should have inferred that, but that's something we didn't officially know. The Allegan Empire too had invented weaponry of its own, firearms capable of expelling projectiles at some great distances. It's one of history's cruel ironies that the Allegan instruments of war were dubbed guns for their resemblance to the Boja's own blades. The Queen's Guard indeed despised the very sight of those weapons and tore through enemy lines to destroy them, giving rise to the enduring title of Gunbreaker. So I guess their long-range guns were really hated, and that's where a little bit of an expansion on some things that we did already know. Bodyguard's attire, the standard of a gunbreaker, hardy and light. The stylish leather armor offers a respectable level of protection, designed to ensure the wearer's readiness in any situation. The back of the coat features an interwoven, I can't read that word, for holstering the gunblade, while a cartridge belt and maintenance tool pouch are attached at the waist. Then it goes in and talks about a few of the different ones. The Lionheart, the revolver, outsider's attire. Then we get explanation of a few of their moves, like Royal Guard, Hypervelocity, Keen Edge, Gunmetal Soul. And then we get more surnames. We get a surname for Radovan. It goes in and talks about his history, which we got a lot on Radovan. We guess we know how old he is. Now he's 45. We get Vitus, quote, Masala. You guys are going to rip me no matter how I say these things. We get a little bit more on cartridges, form of ammunition derived from powdered crystal. Load these into the cylinder of their gunblade to increase its destructive capabilities. We knew that. Yeah, Revolver says the most basic gunblade design, equipped with a swing-out cylinder, slim and light compared to more commonly used gunblades. The Revolver relies on its cartridge's limited etherical capacity to prevent the frame from being overburdened. As a result, the weapon lacks the bite of other gunblades, but it is nevertheless highly practical and easy to use, making it an effective training weapon for practitioners still new to the gunbreaker arts. Get a little more here on the Lionheart. The Lionheart is bequeathed only to those who have proven time and time again to be the greatest of gunbreakers, since the Hrothgar culture has elevated the lion above all beasts. Which makes sense. Encyclopedia Eorzea Volume 3 is coming out in December. You can pre-order it now, whichever language you want that in. I've already pre-ordered mine. So let me know what you're most excited, what you're most hoping to see from this new volume of this great series. Let me know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, subscribe so you know when I do new discussions on Final Fantasy XIV lore. Take care, warriors, and I'll see you next time.